Hey, how we doing? Happy hump day. Happy Wednesday. Drop your college recruiting questions down below. We're going to get to as many of them as we possibly can. Hello. Good to see you. Yo. You're too. What's up? Drop your college recruiting questions down below. I'm going to get to as many of them as we possibly can. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Wednesday. It's February 4th. Hi there. Hey. Sherry, Angela, maybe one of the two. Great to see you. Kian, great to see you. Some of you guys got some confusing handles. It'd make it a lot easier if you just had your name, you know? Drop your college recruiting questions down below. One thing I was talking to somebody about today, and it was somebody on our team, and he was like, man, you should really be saying that on a live because I think parents really need to hear that. And so I'll quickly share that while the questions are coming in, which is crazy parent syndrome is a real thing, meaning that college coaches will not recruit a player if they think the parent is crazy. And it's simply because they believe they can find another athlete who is talented enough, like close enough in talent range, and then they don't have to deal with the drama of the parent. And so, it's a real thing. There's one family I'm thinking of in particular, had an offer. It was a Division I offer. It was a great offer. The parents, for whatever reason, exhibited, we'll call it crazy behavior. And the college coaches straight up pulled the offer immediately and told the parents that we just want to be really honest with you. It's because we think that you're going to be very difficult to deal with, and we don't want to deal with that. And they pulled the offer. And that's a very real thing. And so, figured I'd just started off on a positive note. All right, let's get to some questions. You guys put any in here yet? Can I get an offer with only kickoff films? You better be really fast. Probably not. Unless you're extremely talented. Probably not. You're probably going to need more than that. What is the most commonly misinterpreted part about college recruiting? This is a great question. So what are misconceptions in college recruiting? There's a few of them, okay? The first one is people who say, if you're good enough, you'll get found. That's not true. I have an email sitting in my inbox right now from a family who said that their kid was convinced that if he's good enough, he'll get found. And they waited and they waited and they waited and they waited and he didn't get found. And now they're trying to scramble at the last minute and be proactive, but it's a little bit late for that, right? Is it still possible? Yeah, but it's a little bit late for that. He's a senior. He's a 2026. So a misconception is that if you're good enough, you're just going to get found. Listen, if you are top 1% in the country, then yeah, you're going to get found no matter what. You don't have to do anything. You're good. Like you will get found. For the other 99% of you, that's not going to happen. You have to market yourself to college coaches. You have to get exposure. You have to be strategic about getting in front of coaches and showing them the value that you can provide to them. So if you're thinking, oh, if I'm just good enough, or if you're a parent, oh, my kid is good enough, they better be a top 1% athlete. And if you're like, well, how do I know if my kid is a top 1%? Here's how you know. Number one, you're on every rankings list known to man. Number two, you play for a top club, travel, or high school team, and I'm talking like top 10 in the country. Third, you have media interviews at least once a month. If those three things aren't happening, probably not a top 1% athlete. Probably not. Now, good news is you don't have to be a top 1% athlete to get recruited. You don't have to be a top 1% athlete to play Division I. You don't have to be a top 1% athlete to earn a six-figure scholarship. You don't have to be. But you're not going to be able to rely on talent alone as your marketing. You're going to have to do other stuff. So the first misconception is that talent alone is going to get you discovered. Probably not. Another misconception, we talk a lot about the 20 to 30 contacts thing, where like you contact 20 to 30 schools. Not in today's recruiting world. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, sure. Now, no, you need way more than that. If you're going to use email, social media as your primary method of exposure, you need way more than that. Another misconception, showcases and camps are how you're going to get on college coaches' radars. Remember, college coaches attend showcases and camps to watch and evaluate players they already know about. They've already had conversations with. So if your plan is to get on coaches' radars by playing in a whole bunch of showcases and camps, you're probably going to light a bunch of money on fire. You're going to need more than that. You're going to need to start conversations with college coaches and then go to events for the schools that you're talking to, right? So misconception is that you can just chuck a bunch of money at the process and it'll fix it. I've met a lot of parents who have wasted a lot of money, 10 grand, 20 grand, even more than that, for sure. Okay. Those are a couple misconceptions. I could keep going. Coach connections are widely overrated. We analyzed, I'll put this up there, the 2026 College Recruiting Trends Report that we did. We analyzed over 8,000 athletes across, I think it was like 17 different sports or something like that. And only 4.5% of families reported that coach connections were their primary way of getting discovered by college coaches. 4.5%. So if you're waiting on your coach to connect you with schools and you've been with this coach for a while and it still hasn't happened, stop waiting. You need to be proactive because the odds that your coach is actually going to connect you are just not that good. And that's what the data says, right? So by the way, if you want to see the rest of all the trends that we found amongst the 8,000 athletes, you can download the trends report. It's free, d1scholarship.com/2026. Throw your email in there. We'll send it to you. And there's a lot of really cool data in there. So those will be some common misconceptions about college recruiting. The last one that I'll mention before going on to another question is the misconception that if your kid wants it bad enough, they'll do the work. You'll hear people say this. They'll say your athlete should carry all the responsibility. They should be the one doing everything. And if they're not willing to do that, then they must not want it badly enough. And that is a load of crap. The people that say that are super out of touch with the current state of college recruiting. If you are a parent, please help your athlete. Please. You're not coddling them. You're not spoiling them. Your athlete is in a process that has a 90% attrition rate, meaning 90% of parents and athletes together fail. 7% of high school athletes play college sports. 2% earn scholarships, right? Help your kids. Don't listen to the people who are like, your athlete has to do all of it. So your kid's going to go to class for 6 hours, and then they're going to go to practice for 2 hours, and then they're going to go to a lesson or training for an hour, and then they're going to study for tests, and they're going to do their homework, and they're going to do chores around the house, and they're going to hang out with friends. Oh, wait, we haven't talked about anything in recruiting yet. We haven't talked about sending emails or DMs, posting content on social media, making highlight videos, following up with college coaches, taking phone calls, going to showcases and camps. We haven't talked about any of that yet. I don't know about you. I don't know very many 40-year-olds who can do that, let alone a 15-year-old, 16-year-old. Like, parents, please help your kids. That's another misconception. If your kid wants it bad enough, they'll do the work. No, those people are super out of touch with the current state of college recruiting. How much time should I be putting in? So in the recruiting trends report, we also analyzed how much time people were putting into the recruiting process. The average was about 3 hours a week. So the average was about 3 hours a week. That's roughly 30 minutes a day. Something like that was the average. The other thing that we noticed is that there was hardly any correlation between families that spent way more than that and got better results. And so here's what I'm saying. It's not even necessarily about the time that you put in. It's about what you spend your time on. There were a lot of people who spent a lot of time in the process, according to the report, which you can download for free. d1scholarship.com/2026. You can go read this for yourself. We published it for free for everybody. Okay. Our gift to you. Go take it. So, but the point is, there were people who spent way more than 3 hours a week on their recruiting process and yet didn't get better results. And so better results come not from spending more time on the process, but from doing the right things the right way. Meaning it's strategy, not time, that determines results. So when you look at time, let's do this, okay? 3 hours a week was the average for families, okay? That's what we found. D1 scholarship families, like our families, also averaged 3 hours a week. It was the same. It was the same, about the same. And yet D1 scholarship families contact 3 times more college coaches, get twice as much interest, have 6 times more video, and get more than twice, more than like $40,000 more on average in scholarship money. So same amount of time, dramatically different results. Why? Strategy, right? And so how much time should you be putting in? I think about 30 minutes a day is about right? About 3 hours a week. And like, keep in mind, that's an average. So you'll have some weeks that are going to be higher than that, where it might be 5 hours, or 6 hours, or maybe even 10 hours. But then you're going to have other weeks where it's like an hour. You know what I mean? It just depends on the week. It depends on the season of recruiting that you're in. But the report, which you can download for free, d1scholarship.com/2026, you can download that report for free. And it'll show you that the average was 3 hours a week for families. And there was no correlation between spending a lot of time in the process and getting better results. It has everything to do with strategy. These are great questions so far, guys. I love these questions. I only have film from my sophomore year because I got hurt and didn't play my high school season. Should I still email coaches with my bad film? So you say bad film. If the film is bad, no. You never want to send anything that's bad. Now, if it's just a little old, then you got to use what you have, especially when you're talking about injuries. When you go with injuries, it's very difficult. Injuries are one of the trickiest parts of the recruiting process. So if you're dealing with an injury, then you might have to deal with outdated film that normally you wouldn't send, but you have an extenuating circumstance. So if it's bad film, I would not use it. If it's just a little bit older, outdated, I would use it because at least it's still something that you can get going. We've had kids that get hurt will use old film. Now, those college coaches are not going to come out and give you an offer based on old film. They're just not. But they can see that the kid is talented. They can say, okay, even though this film is old, I can see that there's a foundation here. So just keep me updated with your new film. Great. And you can start building those relationships with college coaches. So you might not get an offer right away, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't use that film. And I'm sorry you got injured. Injuries are the worst. Take it from somebody who's been injured, who's had surgery, missed time. It's the worst. Do you think that I will have a chance at getting into a D1 college if I join track my junior year? I don't know. It's not even necessarily when you start. It's how good and talented you are. The nice thing about track is it's speed, like you don't need, it's not really a super skill based sport. It is an athleticism based sport. If someone told me they're going to start playing baseball junior year, I'd say your odds of playing college baseball are not high at all. It's going to be nearly impossible. For track, that's not really the case. You could be really, really fast and join track junior year and be okay. So it's entirely possible. It's not as big of a deal in your sport. And I would say go for it. What do you have to lose? When should kids send film to college coaches? So what we typically say is that freshman year, you want to do what we call flexing the muscle, which means you send a little bit. So when you get to like sophomore year, junior year, you're going to want to ramp that up and send a ton of it, right? It's a lot easier to do that if you've already sent a little bit of it before, because then I know how to make my highlight videos. I know what app I'm going to use. I know kind of how I'm going to write the script. I know where to find the coach contact information. I know how to do sort of like the basics of the recruiting process. That's much easier to ramp up later if you've already done that. If you've done nothing and then you try to ramp up, it's going to be very, very difficult. So freshman year, we'd say start flexing those muscles. Make some highlight videos, post a little bit of content on social media, send some emails, and then sophomore year would what we call build the foundation. Right. So you're going to build the foundation so that end of sophomore year and the beginning of junior year, you can ramp up and do major volume of it. And that's going to make a big difference for you. Right. If you wait until end of sophomore year or junior year to start building that foundation, you are going to be very overwhelmed and stressed. We see this over and over and over again. Parents say this all the time. They're like, man, I wish I started earlier. I've met a lot of parents who wish that they started the recruiting process earlier. I've never met a single parent who was upset that they started early. Just doesn't happen. So I would say freshman year, start doing some of that stuff and then incrementally build it up. Sophomore year, do more of it. And then by the time you get to the end of sophomore year and into junior year, you should be doing quite literally as much as you can possibly do. Do coaches lie when recruiting? It's interesting. Yeah, they'll lie sometimes. They'll lie sometimes. Now, most of the time, they're pretty honest with you, right? Most of the time. If they're not going to be able to be honest with you for whatever reason, then they'll just ghost you, right? So they won't lie to you. They will just be quiet and they won't say anything. Are there coaches who lie? Yes, there are. But I'd say the majority of coaches will not lie directly to your face. Instead, if they don't want to tell you the truth for whatever reason, whether it hurts or because they don't want to lose you as a recruit or whatever it is, that's when they'll typically go silent. They won't say much because they don't want to lie, so they're not going to put themselves in that position. But yeah, there will be coaches who lie to you. And keep in mind, you as the athlete should never, ever, or the family should never, ever, ever lie to a college coach. There's no reason to do that. Is there a maximum amount of schools I should contact? No. There's not a maximum. In fact, the more that you do, the better. Like if I had it my way, every single family that we work with at D1 Scholarship would contact every single school in the country. Like if I had it my way, right? But the thing is like, okay, maybe that's a little out of hand. Maybe that's a little unreasonable. And a lot of families won't do that. And so we drum it down, right? But even then, we're pushing them to contact 100, 150, 200 schools, like still a pretty solid amount of schools. But there's not a maximum amount. Like if you want to give yourself the absolute best chance to get recruited and get the most offers and get the most amount of scholarship money, then you should contact every single school across all 5 divisions. Now, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of effort. You're probably going to want software to do that, but that would be ideally the best thing that you could possibly do. So there's not a maximum amount of schools. It's not like, oh, once you get over 100 or over 200 or over 500, then you put yourself at risk. No, you should be contacting as many schools as you possibly can. And so by all means, if you want to contact all of them, do it. I made a YouTube video a while back, and it's still the #1 watched YouTube video on our YouTube channel. And the title of the video is "What Happens If I Contact 500 Schools?" or something like that. And I pull out a Google sheet and I just run you through the math, right? If this many coaches open, right, this many coaches click on your video, this many watch it, this is how many responses you're likely to get. And I just run through the math. And the math shows that when you contact 20 to 30 schools, you're putting yourself at major risk. The odds that your kid gets recruited and gets the offers that you're looking for when you do that are not high. And as you increase that number to 50, to 100, to 150, to 200, to et cetera, your odds dramatically increase. Again, I still have the recruiting trends report up. We analyzed, remember, all those 8,000 athletes, we analyzed how many schools they contacted. Average family contacts 45 schools. Okay. Average D1 scholarship family, 150, more than 3 times. The other thing is that if you contact at least 50 schools, you're likely to get 58% more interest. If you contact 76 schools at least, get this, 83% more interest on average. 83% more interest by contacting more schools. So the more schools you contact, the better off you're going to be. And if you want to download that trends report, d1scholarship.com/2026, go check that out. But yeah, there's not a maximum amount of schools that you should contact. You should be contacting as many as you possibly can, as many as you can tolerate. Go for it. Like, let it rip. Let it rip. I wish that when I was going through the recruiting process, especially the first time, because I went through it 2 times. First time was absolutely miserable. We had no idea what we were doing. We spent tens of thousands of dollars going to showcases and camps. It didn't work. Like, none of that. And the second time, we got a lot smarter about the process, and I got, more Division I offers, and good stuff happened, right? Committed to an SEC school, all those things. But I still wish that I had contacted more schools in my recruiting process. I always say, if I knew then what I know now, oh my gosh, would I have had opportunities? Like I would have had so many more opportunities. I just didn't know. What's the best way to market? Film, showcase events. Keep in mind that it'll depend a little bit on the sport. So it's not all going to be the same. But there's 4 ways to get on a college coach's radar, which is what marketing is. If you're like, what is marketing? Marketing means getting on college coaches' radars. That's all that means. Okay. So when he says, what's the best way to market? How are you getting exposure in the recruiting process? There's 4 main ways to do this. And I actually just sent an email out to our email list today about this. Okay. Outreach, content, coach connections, and showcases and camps. So outreach, you can contact college coaches directly through emails or social media DMs. You can post content on Twitter or on Instagram. You have coach connections where your high school travel or club coach knows a bunch of college coaches and is going to connect you with schools. And then you have number 4, showcases and camps, where you're traveling to events around the country, and that's how you're getting exposure. Those are the 4 ways. Now, most people prioritize number 3 and 4. They prioritize coach connections and showcases and camps. And they do 20 to 30 emails to college coaches, and they post once in a while on social media. That's what most people do. It's also why most people end up wasting tens of thousands of dollars on recruiting, is because of that. Because when you go to a showcase or a camp and they don't know who you are ahead of time, the odds that they're watching you are very unlikely. So you're probably just wasting your money. With Coach Connections, I told you earlier with the Recruiting Trends Report, only 4.5% of families reported that Coach Connections were their primary method of getting on college coaches' radars. It's just not that many. You know what I'm saying? It's just not that many. So you're relying on 2 things, 2 of the 4 things. This would be email and content, showcases and camps, and connections. You're relying on these 2 things and throwing these to the wayside. And that's why a lot of families end up under-recruited, not a lot of traction, and yet spending a ton of money in the process and absolutely exhausted because they're trying to travel all over the country and it's not working, right? And so instead, flip them. Start with outreach and content. Do that to start conversations with college coaches. Once you have conversations with college coaches, here's what's crazy. Then you can use showcases and camps and coach connections, and they're way more effective because your coach, high school, travel, club coach, your coach is not going to pick up the phone and make 50 calls for you. They're just not. They have other players on their team or in their organization. They're running a business. They have another job. They're just not. You are not their priority. They're not going to make 50 calls for you. But you know what's funny is if you start conversations with college coaches and those college coaches call your coach to get a reference, how often is your coach going to pick up that call? Every time. Every single time they're going to pick up the phone when a college coach calls them. They just don't want to be the one to have to make all of the calls. So if you generate interest using outreach and content first, then coach connections actually become very valuable because those college coaches will call your coach and now you're getting the best of both worlds. Same thing with showcases and camps. When you start conversations with outreach and content, right? When you go to an event and there's 100 players there, who are they watching? You. They've already watched your video. They've already seen your stats. They've seen your metrics. Maybe they've had some email back and forth with you. Maybe they've talked to you on the phone. And so you have a competitive advantage over everybody else that's at that event. It's why when there are 100 athletes at an event, at the end, how many do they pull aside? What, like 3, 5, right? And what a lot of people don't know is those 3 to 5 were probably already talking to the coaches before the event. So if you've ever gone to an event and your kid has played incredibly well, but they didn't get pulled aside, and you're like, what are they looking at? My kid was the best one at the event. Why is that happening? It's happening because the athletes who got pulled aside were already talking to the college coach. That's why. So those are the 4 ways that you can get on a college coach's radar. So outreach, content, coach connections, and showcases and camps. Now, what's the best way? Like I said, start with outreach and content, then use coach connections and showcases and camps. But then each of those have like a whole deep iceberg underneath of how to actually do them, right? You talk about outreach. Great. There's like 75 things we could talk about in terms of outreach for every single sport and the ways to do that properly and the best ways to do that, right? Same with content. That's why we're having the social media workshop on February 10th, right? So d1scholarship.com/social media workshop. On February 10th, we're going to do a live workshop just on social media. And this is one of the things that we're going to talk about. just going to show you everything that we do on social media that works. Tens of millions of dollars in scholarships, 14 different sports. I'm just going to be like, here you go. Tickets are $129 right now, and the price will be going up on Monday. What age would you recommend starting to reach out to coaches? Kind of mentioned this already, but freshman year, I think you should be flexing the muscles. And then sophomore year, you're building the foundation, meaning you're doing more of it. And then every subsequent year, you're doing significantly more. But I would send a couple freshman year. The thing is, you're not sending them freshman year because you're going to get an offer freshman year. That's not why you do it. You send them freshman year so that when you're going to start sending a bunch of them sophomore, junior, senior year, you've done it before and it's easier for you to do that so you can do a bunch of them. That's why you do it, not because you're going to get a bunch of offers freshman year. When choosing between colleges, let's say finances are equal, okay? Academics are the same and playing time will be equal. Okay, what should be the most important things to consider? This is a great question, Olivia. So just to clarify, you have two schools. The finances are equal. Academics are equal. Playing time is equal. What are some other things that you should be considering for that school? The first thing that I would say is distance from home. Okay. So are you comfortable going far away from home? Do you want to go far away from home? Do you not want to go far away from home? So location is going to be a big deal in terms of distance from home. The second thing is when it comes to location is weather. Right? So if, for instance, you go to the Pacific Northwest, but you don't like the rain and you don't like clouds, that's going to be a tough deal for you, right? Like you might have seasonal depression or something like that. So you should consider the location, how far you are from home, as well as the weather. Some other things that you should consider. You said academics are the same, but I would also make sure that they have the major that you want to study. I think that's really important. You should be looking at coaching staff. Coaching staff, you got to be careful because you don't want to go to a school just because of the coaches, because if those coaches end up going somewhere else, and the only reason you went to the school is because of the coaches, then you're kind of, it's like, oh, shoot, now what? I don't like the rest of the school. I came for the coaches, but now they're gone. But coaching staff is a big deal, right? Especially if you're a parent, you should be thinking, who do I want mentoring my kid over the next 4 years? What kind of role model are they going to shape them and mold them? Because for the first 18 years of their life, that was you, right? When they go to college, it's not going to be you anymore. The person, the adult figure who's going to have the most influence over your kid in college is going to be the coaching staff of that school. So it's critical that you put your kids in hands that you're comfortable with and confident with. And you're like, yeah, that's good. I like that. Culture of the school, I think, is big too. Like when you go to visit the school, do you feel like the people there are your type of people, and people that you're going to enjoy spending time around and people that will make you better? Do you like just the culture and the vibe on campus? Do you like the campus? Are you happy to be there? Do you like spending time there? Those would all be some factors that I would consider apart from finances, academics, and playing time. And I think that's a fantastic question, Olivia. You guys are asking some really, really good questions today. I very much appreciate it. And I hope that this is helpful for you guys. Regarding social media, are there any platforms that you must be utilizing? It depends on your sport. So should you be utilizing all of them? Yes, but must be, it depends on your sport. So for instance, if you play football, then you must be using Twitter. There's really no question about that. You must be, but that's not the case for every single sport. Each sport is going to have unique parts to it, right? And so usually when you talk about social media, you're primarily talking about Twitter and Instagram. YouTube is also a social media platform that we'll use a lot, but we use that more for like a hub for all of our video rather than actually getting on coaches' radars on YouTube. We use it more like a profile, probably that kind of thing. But in terms of getting exposure, Twitter and Instagram are the two big ones, right? And again, it's going to depend on the sport. But for some sports, there are some that you absolutely must be on. And we'll talk about that at the social media workshop. So February 10th, social media workshop, d1scholarship.com/social media workshop. If you want to come hang out, it's on Tuesday. So 6 days away, something like that. And then the price is going to go up on Monday. So if you want to get a better deal, go now. But we'll talk all about social media then. How do I get noticed if I don't play for a really good school, but I play against other good schools? You don't need to go to a really strong school or be on a really strong team in order to get noticed. Is it easier? Yeah, it's definitely easier, but you don't need that, right? So the way that we normally say it is it's not mandatory, but it's helpful. So I would say if you don't play for a very good high school team, travel team, club team, then you need a greater emphasis on digital marketing, which is outreach to college coaches and content. So you need to do more of those things. You need to do those things better than athletes who are on big, well-known teams. So you're going to have to do more outreaching content and better outreaching content. And if you do that, it's totally fine and you can still get recruited. Listen, we've had kids get recruited from Alaska. We've had kids get recruited from Hawaii. We've had kids get recruited from small town, rural Iowa at a private Christian school with 70 kids in their graduating class. Like all of that, right? How does that happen? It's because we put a greater emphasis on those other things that I just mentioned, and you start conversations with college coaches, and then the team isn't quite as big of a deal. Again, it will always be helpful, but it's not mandatory. The last example I'll give here is a soccer example. We had a men's soccer player, and if you are in the men's soccer world, you know you pretty much have two options, like MLS Next, ECNL. Like that's basically it, right? And MLS Next would be like the biggest one. This kid didn't play for one of those teams. And he was told that he couldn't get recruited, that he couldn't play D1, and that it would be very difficult for him to even get to like a D3 school. That's what he was told. And they asked me, and I said, no, that's not true. You're just, if that's the case, if people are saying that, they just don't know enough about recruiting. They're not good enough at what they do. You don't need it. And so guess what? At one point, that kid who doesn't play for a major team, he was playing in one of the lowest leagues, was talking to over 100 schools, ended up getting 10 Division I offers and committed to a Division I school with a $240,000 athletic scholarship. So you don't need to play for a top team, but it helps. Are camps better for skill positions, and are they worth it for linebackers and DNs? Because I know a lot are skill position focused. There's a little bit of that, but remember camps, the whole point is that you're already talking to schools going into camp. So when you show up at the camp, more than anything, it's to see you with their own two eyes in person and evaluate you there. That's it. And that can happen for any position, right? If you're 6'5", 280 pounds, then it's still beneficial for you to go to a camp and they can see your size, see your strength, see your speed, like those types of things. So it depends. I would say that, yeah, I think skill players probably get more attention at events like that, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's not worth it for you to go. It just means that you should be prioritizing events where you're already talking to schools. You know what I mean? What percentage of softball that go to D1 colleges are getting a full ride? Not that many. It also depends on how you qualify a full ride. Is that a full ride athletically? Is it a full ride if you combine academic and athletic money? That's more common, but still not super common. Like, you'd have to be really good and go to a really big school to get a full ride for softball like that, even to D1. But I would say that there are quite a few athletes that are getting anywhere from like 60 to 80, 60 to 90%, depending on the athlete. Like that is much more common. But again, that would be combining academic money. So it depends on how you qualify a full ride. Is that just athletic? Way less common. If it includes academic, more common, but more commonly you're going to see like 50 to 80%, 60 to 90% if they're really big on the player. The other thing about softball is they're going to prioritize pitchers. So pitchers tend to get more money than position players. So that's also something to keep in mind. Should the emails come directly from the athlete, parents, or both? They should come directly from the athlete, not parents, not both. They should only come from the athlete. Now, if you were here at the beginning of this live, someone asked me, what are some misconceptions in the college recruiting process? And I said, parents, please don't leave it up to your athlete. Parents, please help your athletes, right? I said that. And you might be saying, well, they're supposed to come from the athlete, but I'm supposed to help as the parent. Yeah, send them on behalf of your athlete, meaning that you, the parent, can be the one who's writing the scripts, pressing send, all those things. Just make sure the email is coming from the athlete's email address, right? That's what I mean. So I'm huge on parents entering into the process and helping their kids. We have generated tens of millions of dollars of scholarships in a relatively short period of time. We've worked with hundreds of athletes and families on a very close hands-on basis. If you expand it to the broader number, you're talking thousands or tens of thousands of athletes. We've had more than 10,000 families apply to work with us in some fashion. Here's my point. This isn't like I'm taking this from like 4 athletes that I tried working with, on my own one time. I'm saying we have a ton of data and experience with all different sports, different demographics of families, different financial situations, different employment situations. And yet the one thing that is constant amongst all of them is that if you take the recruiting process and you give it to your 16-year-old, you are setting them up for failure. Please help your kids. The recruiting process is a beast. It is very different than it used to be. 99% of the people that we work with inside D1 Scholarship are parents. Parents, if someone says that they are going to buy the thing and then give it to their kid, guess what we tell them? Please don't buy the thing. That's not a good idea. It's not going to work for you. Please don't waste your money. Now, if you as the parent are going to be involved, best money you could spend. But please don't take the process and give it to your 16-year-old thinking that they're going to do an A+ job while they have already a full-time schedule at school, practice, etc. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So should the emails come directly from the athlete, they should come from the athlete's email address. It should never come from your parental email address. It shouldn't be both of them. It should only come from the athlete's email address, but you as the parent can be the one to make the videos, write the scripts, get the contact info, build the contact list, press send. All that is fine. Just make sure it comes from the athlete's email. Wanted to play college soccer, but too much favoritism in my high school team, so I quit, and I'm deciding to join club soccer. Ball out in club soccer. Do all Division I universities offer stipends to golf athletes? Stipends? Like when you travel? Not entirely sure what you mean by that. But usually there's no absolutes in college recruiting unless it's a legal thing. Usually there's no absolutes. So are all athletes? Probably not. In almost anything. Are no athletes? Probably not in almost anything. Have a senior football player with a 3.2 GPA, smaller than a typical player, 5'7", 157. Is it too late to search out scholarships? No, it's not too late, but you got to go now. And you got to make sure you have reasonable expectations. So at this point, I would be looking at JUCOs. I'd be looking at NAIAs. I'd be looking at D3s. We have kids who are getting Division I football offers right now, but they've been in the process for a while. They've been building content. They've been sending emails and DMs. They've been marketing themselves, having conversations with college coaches, going to camps. And so there are still D1 offers going out to football players right now, but ones who have been in the process for a bit. You know what I'm saying? If you're starting from scratch, I would say you can still get recruited, even though your kid is a senior, even though he's smaller, on the smaller side, right? That can still happen, but you got to get going now. You got to have reasonable expectations, and you have to cram basically 2 years of work into about 2 to 3 months. So possible? Yes. Fun? Probably not. But we've had lots of second semester seniors get offers, scholarships. That's a real thing. You can do that. It's just not ideal. It's going to be more stressful. But yeah, I would say go for it. What do you have to lose? Can I still get scholarships from club team? I left high school team yesterday due to favoritism. I think you mentioned that already. Yeah, you can get scholarships. Depends on the sport that you play. Some sports that'll be more common or more acceptable than others. Sunza Jr. received several calls from coaches for some powerhouse baseball programs, California, and some Ivy Leagues. How does he turn phone calls into offers? So, the first thing that I would say is just because you have a phone call doesn't mean that you're close to an offer. Okay. So, the way that I think about this is a scale from 0 to 100. Okay. And 0 is you're just starting your recruiting process. Nobody knows who you are yet. And 100 is this is our guy. Here's a scholarship offer. Okay. When you like email a coach or something like that, you go from like 0 to 20. And I'm going to tie this back to phone calls here in a second. You go from like 0 to 20, right? And then maybe you send a follow up and you go 20 to 30. And then they, you know, and then let's say at that point you're at 30 and they have a phone call with you. And that gets you 0 to 30 to 40. You have that phone call, which is great, but you're still early in the process. So a phone call doesn't necessarily mean that you're on the back end of the process. Now, let's say you're at 40, then they watch you play live and you go up to like 50 or 60, and then you have another phone call and you're at 70, and then you send another follow-up and you're at 80, and then you have another phone call. Now that phone call is a lot closer to an offer, right? And so a phone call doesn't necessarily mean that you're close to an offer. It might mean that you're early in the process, and those are great indications. Like that's a great thing to have happen. Phone call is never a bad thing. The reason that I'm saying this is because you say, how does he turn phone calls into offers? It depends on whether that phone call, you're early in the process or you're later in the process. Those are two different things, right? Like those are two different strategies. If you have to make up from 40 to 100, there's a lot more work that has to be done. And we're talking about a full scale strategy to do that. If you're on the verge of getting an offer, that's a very different thing. And so I know that's kind of like a roundabout way, but the challenge is I don't know which one you're at. And I could talk for 5 hours about each of those. And obviously we don't have time to do that. So how's he turn phone calls into offers? The last thing I'll leave you with here is if you don't have an offer from a school, but they know who your kid is, it simply means that they're not 100% sure that your kid is the best option they can find. That's it. As soon as they are sure that your athlete is the best option that they can find and get into their school, they will give you an offer. If that hasn't happened yet, what you need to do is provide more evidence proven to a college coach that your kid is the best option, meaning you need more. You say baseball, I'm not sure what position, but like you need more video, stats, metrics, awards, accomplishments, coach recommendations, in-person evaluation, third-party media mentions. Like you need more evidence to show college coaches to prove to them that your kid really is good enough to be the one to get the offer. So you have phone calls. That's awesome. Again, I don't know if you're early or late in terms of, because it's not based on junior or senior, right? It's based on where you're at in the conversations with coaches. And so I would just say, if you've had phone calls, but not offers from those schools, it means they're not sure that your kid is the best option they can find. And you need to provide more evidence and more types of evidence to show them that your kid really is the best option. When contacting schools, should you contact a smaller amount of each division, or how should that be divided? You guys are asking some really phenomenal questions today. This is great. When contacting schools, should you contact similar amount each division? Should that be divided? You should, in the beginning, here's what I would say. I'd say contact roughly an even number at all schools, D1, D2, D3, NAIA, JUCO, something like that. Okay. And I call this the double down method. So let's say you contact 20 schools at each of the 5 divisions. That's 100 schools. We talk about emailing or contacting 100 schools all the time. So let's say it's 100 schools, 20 schools at each of the 5 divisions, D1, D2, D3, NAIA, JUCO. Okay. When you do that, 20 schools at each division is actually not that much. Like 20 schools at each one is it's not a huge sample size. But let's say that you contact 20 D1 schools and you get 1 or 2 D1s to respond positively. Oh, okay. Do you know what you should do then? Then build out a list of 100 D1 schools and go after them, because it means that you're probably a Division I talent. Now, if you do the 20 across all 5 divisions and you get nothing from D1, nothing from D2, but you get 3 D3 schools, guess what you should do? Go get 50 to 100 schools that are in the D3 level and contact them. I call this the double down method. And the reason is because You're figuring out your talent level because remember, no one's going to be able to look at you and say where you belong. The best talent evaluation is contacting schools at every level and seeing who responds. So you see you contact a small number at each division, see who responds. That's where you belong, at least for now. That can change, but at least for now. And then you double down on that division and you go contact a bunch of schools in that division that you know you can play in because you've already gotten real responses from coaches in that division. That's how, if you ever see us post a testimonial or a success story from one of our families that is a D3 caliber player, but they're talking to 50 schools, that's how we do that. And you're probably like, because if you see somebody that's talking to 50 schools, you might assume, well, they must just be really talented. They must just be a Division I player, right? No, not necessarily. When you use the double down method, you can have somebody who's a D3 caliber player talking to 50 D3 schools. And all that does is it gives them options, more likely to get offers, more likely to find their best fit, more likely to get more scholarship money. And so use the double down method. So contact a small number at each division and then double down on the divisions that you're getting interest from. And I promise you, if you're a Division I talent, you will get a couple D1 schools interested. And that is enough for you to say, you know what, I need to go contact Division I schools, like a bunch of them. But then you're being more strategic about how you're doing it. So that's a great question. If the coach offers you an athletic scholarship, it's not listed on the financial aid offer. Should we caution accepting the school? Should we wait for the athletic portion to show? I would simply ask the coach. It's not uncommon for something like that to not necessarily be on there, but I would ask the coach about that. I just straight up say, Coach, I don't see it on there. Just double checking. And they might say, yeah, we don't include the athletic scholarship on there. You'll get a different letter about that, or we don't advertise that publicly or something like that. But it's really not, it's extremely frowned upon to offer athletic money to a kid and then not give it to them. They might pull the offer or something like that, but they're not going to lie about that. It's really not okay and actually illegal. So they won't do that. But if you're worried about it, just ask the coach. Hey, I see it's not mentioned here. Is there a reason why? Just can you clarify for me? And then they'll clarify, and then you can feel better about it. Do schools give D1 offers to sophomores? Not officially. They're technically not allowed to. You'll see kids posting like, I just got my second offer as a sophomore, blah, blah, blah. There's a couple ways that stuff like that happens. Like they can go through a high school coach or a club coach or something like that. But the other thing to remember is like, oh man, a lot of that is fake. A lot of that's not real. And a lot of those offers, they might be around sophomore year, but they're not going to be committable come junior or senior year. And I would also caution somebody on even if it was a real committable offer sophomore year, I'd caution you on taking it. Like your kid is so young still. There's so much that could change and develop of what they want to do with their life, what they want to study, where they want to be, the type of school they want to go to. So much can change. I don't even think committing as a sophomore is a good idea, even if that was possible. But the majority of that stuff is not real as a sophomore anyway. I've seen some really bad games of telephone, where the kid is like, oh yeah, I had a phone call with the coach last week, and the friend will be like, oh yeah, me too. And then the kid will want to one up him, and then he'll be like, oh yeah, he gave me an offer. It's like, yeah, but it didn't actually happen. He's just trying to best his friend, I hope you're well. I hope you're well, Dustin. Thank you. I appreciate you. Do you guys just do workshops, et cetera, or do you actually do this for players? We do this for players. So we have a full program. It's called the Accelerator, d1scholarship.com/accelerator. There's some information on the page. You can go check that out. It's for parents. So you'll fill out an application just to make sure that you qualify for it. And then you can schedule a call with us, consultation call. We'll walk you through. First of all, we want to learn more about your situation, make sure it's somebody we can actually help. And we'll figure out what's really holding you back, the value that we might be able to provide. And then if it makes sense, we'll walk you through the accelerator and kind of what that looks like. So no, we do hands-on stuff. There's also variations of the accelerator depending on how much hands-on stuff you want. So we kind of have something for everybody. So if you're interested in getting more help where we can be more involved in your process than just workshops, Absolutely. We use the workshops as a couple things. One, for people who maybe can't afford or aren't ready to invest as much in something like the accelerator, then the workshops are a really easy way to get in, right? Because they're cheap, $100, $150. So there's that piece. But the other thing is like there's a lot of phonies in college recruiting, and we know that, right? And so one of the things that we do with the workshops is, hey, if you just want to see if we're the real deal, then you can just buy a workshop ticket for $100, $150, and it's fully refundable. So if you feel like you didn't get your money's worth, don't worry about it. We'll give you the money back. But then you can actually see the things that we really talk about and the strategies that we have that we don't share publicly. And then there's people who come to those workshops and they go, oh, okay, these guys are the real deal. And then they upgrade into the accelerator or something like that. So yeah, we absolutely do that. So d1scholarship.com/accelerator. If you're a parent and you want hands-on process, you want us basically helping you through the whole thing. That's one option for you, d1scholarship.com/accelerator. And then if you're like, I don't know if I'm ready for something like that, come to the social media workshop on Tuesday, d1scholarship.com/social media workshop. Tickets are $129 right now. They're going to go up on Monday. So now is a great time to get them. And we're just going to share everything that we learned on social media. So if you feel like social media is a foreign language to you, you feel like you're not really getting the most out of it recruiting wise, and you're like, I don't even know how to do that, then the social media workshop would be a great fit for you. And this is for baseball. Yep, we do baseball. No problems there. Once you have a phone call with a coach, do you recommend follow-ups be via text or email and or IWLCA portal? So this is a great question. The challenge is that we'll typically jump between them. So when you move to an elevated form of communication, which would be text or phone call. So we call it the hierarchy of interest. Not all interest is equal. So at the bottom, you'd have like coaches following you on social media. It doesn't mean nothing, but it's also not super relevant, right? But then when you turn that into like an email or a DM conversation, that's an elevated form of interest. Phone call or text is another elevation in interest or communication. And so typically when you move up, you don't want to regress and go back. So typically I'd say, hey, follow-ups should be via text. The challenge with this though, is for anybody that knows kind of, well, this would really be clients because we don't share this kind of stuff anywhere else. But like the challenge would be that with the amount of follow-up that we do, we would not want to blow up a college coach's text like phone with the amount of follow-up. And that's why we'll switch back and forth between something like email or DM and text. And we'll go back and forth so that we don't blow up, because phone is very personal and private, like an email is an email, DM's a DM. But when you get a text, they might be sitting on the couch holding their 8-month-old. You know what I mean? Like you just want, and you don't want to be blowing them up all the time on that. That's going to really annoy them. But you do want a lot of follow-ups, and that's not annoying. You just have to do it in the right way. So it's a little bit challenging to answer the question. I know it doesn't sound like I'm answering the question, but the answer is that we'll do both, and we'll change how we do that based on the frequency of communication. Cost of attendance, the workshops are anywhere from $100 to $150. And the accelerators are anywhere from like $1,200 and all the way up past that, depending on how much help you want. Yeah, Nate, stipends maybe referring to covering meal plans. Yeah, usually that's how that refers to. It's either like meal plans, sometimes it's books, sometimes it's travel. Like it kind of depends. But again, that a lot of times that's covered in scholarships. And so just a difficult question to answer. Can I still get a running scholarship for D2 cross and track? Yeah. Yeah, totally. Great info. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for being here. Should the double down method occur sophomore year? It should not occur sophomore year. And the reason why is because you can't tell who's expressing interest because they're not allowed to. So you can still get like little bits of interest. Like they can send you camp invites. They can send you brochure type stuff. They can even say like, oh, looking forward to seeing you, or looking forward to watching you, or looking forward to calling you on so-and-so date. Like they could say little things like that, but you're not going to get a ton of personal interest. And so you can't judge. It would be an inaccurate thing, right, to use the double down method as a sophomore, because it just doesn't make a lot of sense. because you don't know who's actually interested. Freshman year too early for the double down method. Yep. Yep, definitely. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for being here. What time is it on Tuesday, please? The workshop, social media workshop on February 10th is going to be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Everyone who buys a ticket will also get the replay of it. And then they will also get the slides from the workshop. And we will not, you will not be able to purchase that afterward. At least that's how we have it right now. Maybe we change that. I don't know. But as of right now, you're only getting it if you come to the workshop or buy a ticket before the workshop. So it'll be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, February 10th, d1scholarship.com/social media workshop. No, that helps. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for your time and wealth of information. I've learned so much just listening to your live sessions. Amazing. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad they've been helpful. Thanks for coming back over and over again. All right, guys, we're going to call it there at about 56 minutes. Looks like we're done with the questions. Hope this has been helpful. We'll be back again tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. I'm thinking that we're probably going to go back to 1 p.m. Eastern next week. Just for those who do come a lot, we're probably going to switch that up, go back to 1 p.m. Eastern. But tomorrow and Friday will still be at 5 p.m. Eastern. Come, hang out, ask questions again. And again, social media workshop, d1scholarship.com/social media workshop. Or if you want more hands-on help, you can join the program, d1scholarship.com/accelerator, or I should say apply because we don't accept everybody, but you can apply d1scholarship.com/accelerator. All of this can be found on our website. Thank you all so much for being here. Hope you have a wonderful Wednesday, and I will see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern.